Hi there, and welcome to another interview. Today, I've got the fabulous Kerry with me from Homesteadhow. You probably have heard of him. And I'm going to ask Kerry the same question I ask absolutely everybody. Hey, Kerry, why did you become carnivore?
I became carnivore because I was hopelessly depressed for most of my adult life. I suffered with depression and anxiety, and I was on every antidepressant, SSRI medication for many, many years. And then I had other health issues, and my health issues just kept building up. So was diagnosed with IBS. My stomach was always gurgling and bubbling and hurting me. I was diagnosed with sleep apnea. I'd stop breathing throughout the night. I went in for several sleep studies. I had multiple kidney stones. I had skin cancer on my ear once, which in retrospect, I kind of think was due to nutrition, but we can talk about that a little bit later. I lost my gallbladder. My stomach issues were getting so bad. I went in and I had a test on my gallbladder, and they were like, it's pretty bad. It's kind of on the fence though. We could keep it or it could go. And I'm like, my stomach hurts so bad. Let's get rid of the gallbladder. Multiple kidney stones. I had arthritis and gout. I had gout in my foot, and that was kind of one of the last big issues I had for about 18 months. And it was to the point where it was causing mobility issues. When I would go to the grocery store or shopping, I was rolling around on one of those mobility scooters in my late 30s. So I was a pretty big mess. And then the biggest thing that happened for me was several years ago. I was at home. I was sitting down watching TV, and I went to stand up, and I got really dizzy. I kind of fell over. My half of my face was numb. My fingers were tingling, and my wife was like, "What's going on?" She called 911, took an ambulance ride to the hospital, and I was diagnosed with a TIA mini stroke, and ended up spending, I think it was 4 days at the stroke unit at the hospital. Thankfully, it was a mini stroke and not a regular stroke. So some of those symptoms I was having, the confusion, the numbness, those eventually did go away. But they did many subsequent tests because you're like, you're not even 40 and you're having a mini stroke. You've had depression, you've had all these other issues. So let's see what's wrong with you. They tested my heart. And one of the crazy things with my heart is I've had an irregular heartbeat since birth. I was born with it. When I was in kindergarten, back in the day, when you'd wear a heart monitor, it was like this huge embarrassing vest. I remember wearing that to school, and I'm like, why do I gotta wear this, Mom? And my mom had to take me to like a pediatric cardiologist. And like when I say my heartbeat was irregular, it wasn't just like bump, bump, bump. It was highly erratic. I had some AFibs in there, but my whole life, every doctor's appointment I would go to, the first thing they do, they check your blood pressure and they check your heart. And every single time the nurse would say, "Oh my goodness, did you realize you have an irregular heartbeat?" And every single time I'd say, "Yes, you guys tell me this every single time. It's in my charts. I've had all these tests," sort of things. So I had that irregular heartbeat, but they did more tests when I was diagnosed with the mini stroke. I had a heart echo, which is just an ultrasound of the heart. I had an esophageal echo, which is where they stick a camera down your throat. And then I had a full heart catheter, which was a lot more evasive and not very fun. But as a result of that, they diagnosed me with a low ejection fraction. My ejection fraction was 44, and that's a measure of how well your heart keeps up with the needs of your body. Mine was not keeping up. So I was getting fatigued. I was getting dizzy. 44. And they also diagnosed me with cardiomyopathy and congestive heart failure after doing all of those heart tests, and put me on a whole bunch of heart medication. So I had all of those things coming together. And, years ago, I had found the keto diet watching a documentary on Netflix. And I tried it. I was desperate and I tried it. And it was the only thing in my life that ever gave me this sort of, whoa, something's happening here. This is doing something more than the pills are, especially in terms of the depression I had. The depression I had is hard to describe to people that haven't experienced depression before, but it was just black hole depression. I had suicidal ideation. It was absolutely horrible, and it went on for years and years. And when I did keto, it was the only thing that sort of touched it. The antidepressants they gave me, they sort of numbed my body, and I felt kind of like a zombie, but I didn't have any hope and I didn't have any emotion. But keto helped a little bit. But my problem with keto was I could never maintain it. So I yo-yo dieted for many, many years. I tried different variations of keto. for 1 year, I did OMAD, 1 meal a day keto, and I felt probably the best I have my entire life, but I couldn't maintain that. And I remember I did a YouTube video with all my excitement for this 1 year OMAD keto and losing some weight. And I think it was about 4 months later, I gained all of the weight back and the depression was back and everything was still there. So I was hopelessly depressed and I had all of these issues. And I came across a video on YouTube from a gentleman named Dante Ferrigno. And he said he was going to do the lion diet. He was going to eat only meat. And he was just starting. And he was overweight and he had depression and he had IBS. And he had many things that I had. And I watched that video, Stephen, and I was like, this guy's insane. Like, what are you're going to eat meat for a year? But in my head, I'm like, scientifically, technically, that should work. I know about keto. He's going to be in deep ketosis. That's got to be good for him. But there's no way that's healthy. There's no way that that's sustainable. You got to have moderation. You got to have balance. I noticed this video he did was 2 years old. And very cynically, I was talking, my wife was watching it with me. I'm like, let's fast forward and see his latest video. There's no way this guy's still eating meat. I looked at his latest video. You couldn't recognize Dante. He lost all of his weight. His depression, anxiety was gone. His face was just glowing. He had a big smile on his face. And I was like, oh my goodness, this guy he did it. He actually did it. I still thought it was crazy. And I'm like, he's an outlier. You can't just eat meat. And then I found Dr. Ken Berry, and I do things to the extreme, and I watch Dr. Berry videos to the extreme. I think I watched every video that guy ever put out. And I came across the video he did on type 2 diabetes and reversing it. And I didn't even know you could reverse type 2 diabetes. But there were about 2,000 comments on that video, and they were saying, Dr. Berry, you saved my life. Dr. Berry, my A1C was this, and now it's this. And it was over and over again. There was 2,000 comments on there. There were many, many comments on there saying you saved my life. That was when I decided, like, at first I'm like, what is this Dr. Berry guy selling? He's got to have some pills or supplement or diet plan you got to buy. And then I'm like, no, it's just free information. You're just watching these videos. That was when I decided to start carnivore. And that was 470 days ago.
Wow. That is a brilliant story. And when you said before we started, you'll have no problem remembering everything, you're right. That was amazing. So 470 days of carnivore. I'm going to ask you really mundane questions and get it out of the way because people always ask this. What are you eating and what's your meal frequency? And we'll get that out of the way.
Yeah, I focus only beef, butter, bacon, eggs. I'm extremely strict. I have never cheated in 470 days. I'm not shaming anyone that has cheated. I cheated on keto and it wrecked me over and over again. So I'm never doing it. The biggest difference for me on carnivore versus keto is I realized that I was addicted to sugar in the standard American diet. And I realized you can't moderate an addiction. And when I was doing keto, I was trying to moderate my addiction. And that's just not doable for me. So what I eat, beef, butter, bacon, eggs, almost every day I'll have eggs and ground beef or eggs and bacon. And then I'll usually have beef. I prefer beef. Sometimes I'll have chicken or fish. It's very rare, but big fatty ribeye is my favorite. I don't eat that every day. It's usually a couple burger patties or some ground beef and some sort of beef. I've been doing different cuts of beef lately. Like I just tried beef shanks recently, which I really like, but mostly beef, butter, bacon, eggs, sometimes chicken, sometimes fish.
Yeah, and from your excellent story there, you were saying about you've lost your gallbladder. Many people who are thinking about going carnivore, because we get a lot of viewers that are sort of dipping their toe in a bit like you did when you first saw it. And there is a myth that you can't do carnivore if you've lost your gallbladder. So how are you coping?
Yeah, I would say that's a big misconception and myth. I have no gallbladder. I've been just fine. My wife has no gallbladder. She just hit day 100 yesterday on carnivore. She's doing just fine. And I've talked to so many individuals through my YouTube channel and the work I've been doing in carnivore, and so many without a gallbladder. Some people have to supplement and maybe take bile salts when they're first starting. Some people, you got to be cautious. One piece of advice I'd give you if you don't have a gallbladder, be cautious on the fat. Carnivore, it's important getting enough fat, but the types of fat can matter. So if you have melted or rendered fat, you might have a little bit more of a problem versus just having like some cold butter for fat. But yeah, I've been just fine, and really hasn't been an issue at all. In fact, everything digestive, gallbladder, stomach wise, has been a million times better. I think it was about a month into it where I realized I don't have IBS anymore. My stomach isn't bubbling and gurgling and hurting. Like my stomach hurt all the time. That just went away. My digestive functions have all been just perfectly normal. Like the craziest thing with carnivore, I always tell people is I feel like I don't have a stomach anymore. It's the weirdest thing. I feel so light, like there's nothing there anymore. In all my life before, it was always heavy and hurting and bothering me. I don't even notice I have a stomach anymore on carnivore.
Yeah, fabulous. And I think because you had this long list, and I will come back to your skin cancer and your ear because you said we'd revisit that. But I want to get to the heart issues because I'm assuming that you go back for checkups. So there's a couple of things I want to ask. Firstly, do you go back for checkups? And secondly, if you do, what do the medical profession think of the way you're eating?
Yes, I have gone in for several checkups. So just, I guess, real quick, after I started carnivore, the first week I was on carnivore, I stopped snoring, which is crazy to me because I was told I was snoring because I was overweight, but I didn't lose any weight before I stopped snoring. And I realized I was snoring from inflammation. And Dr. Jordan Peterson famously was on Joe Rogan, and he said the same thing. He said he stopped snoring the first week. I've heard that from several other people. Of course, losing the weight will help, but I stopped snoring right away. My depression and anxiety, that took a little bit longer, but around day 25, day 30, I really started noticing that going down. I think by like day 60, I not only had no more depression and anxiety, which it was my biggest issue my entire adult life, 15 years. I had 20 pills. I have this pill case, Stephen, of all my medication for all my different issues. Many of those were for depression and anxiety. Not only I would have given anything for my depression to just be normal, like I could just be a normal person, it flipped. Like my default demeanor now, I'm happy, I'm smiling, I'm full of gratitude, I'm thankful, grateful, blessed. Before this, I was just absolutely miserable. Those were some of the big things that happened early. The heart issues, a couple months into carnivore, I noticed like, wow, I'm not getting fatigued anymore like I used to. The perfect example I have here, something that's been consistent before carnivore and after, is church. My family would always go to church on Sunday, and at church, you have to stand up and sing, sit down, stand up and sing. You do it over and over again. I love going to church, but that is a little bit of an annoying part of it for me with my issues I was having. I had it down to a science where I'd be standing next to my wife and I'd hold the pew in front of me because I would stand up and I would get dizzy to the point where I would fear that I'd fall over. And actually, this didn't happen in church, but one time I was using a chainsaw outside and I fell over with the chainsaw running. I passed out. I was so fatigued and tired from the congestive heart failure. So anyways, after doing carnivore, a couple of weeks into it, we were at church. I stood up and I'm like, I'm not dizzy at all. Like I feel amazing. And I whispered that to my wife. I was like, that's really kind of weird. But long story short, a couple of months into carnivore, my wife and I were watching a movie in bed. She had her head on my chest and she said, she looked up at me and she's like, your heart is beating normally for the first time. And just so people know, my wife and I have been together since age 14. I'm 44. We're about to hit 30 years together. So she's been to many of my appointments. She knows my heart issues. But I told her, I'm like, you're crazy. Like, you don't know, you're not a doctor. Like, you don't know what you're talking about. I'm like, I'm gonna go get a stethoscope from the pharmacy. And I did that. I listened to it. I was like, wow, my heart is normal. And this is a thing, my whole life since birth, it's been irregular and abnormal. And I said to myself at that point, I need to get into the cardiologist again, even though there's nothing wrong with me, because I feel like my congestive heart failure has reversed. And my congestive heart failure, I mentioned earlier, I went in, they tested me. My ejection fraction was 44, and they diagnosed me with congestive heart failure. It wasn't keeping up with the needs in my body. They also diagnosed me with cardiomyopathy. So I had to go in to the cardiologist. They did a heart echo on me. This was just a couple months ago. And the first thing I asked the technician doing the heart echo, she said, do you have any questions? I said, really, there's nothing wrong with me. I just want to know if my congestive heart failure has changed at all. I want to know what my ejection fraction is. She's like, oh, I can tell you that right when we do the test. So she did the test. She said, your ejection fraction is now 60. And 60, just for people that know, you're not going for 100%. 60 is normal. If you look it up, there's all these charts. 60 is a normal ejection fraction. So I did that, and then they sent off all of the tests to the cardiologist. And long story short, he came back to me, and in my notes he wrote, You have no evidence of irregular heartbeat anymore. I didn't notice any gallop in your heartbeat. Your congestive, your cardiomyopathy has reversed. You have no evidence of cardiomyopathy. And my ejection fraction, she said it was 60. She put 55 to 60 in my medical records, but in either case, 55 is normal as well. So yeah, my lifelong irregular heartbeat reversed on carnivore. For people, there's people out there that are like, that's crazy, I don't believe it. It's in my medical records, and I'm showing people in the documentary we're working on the before and the after. My ejection fraction went from 44 to 60. My heartbeat's perfectly normal right now. I feel like I could get up and run a marathon right now. And it's uncharted territory, Stephen, because I think most people that are diagnosed with congestive heart failure, they don't go on to only eat meat. In fact, they avoid meat and they do the opposite. But I did a video on my YouTube channel about this, and my goodness, the people are coming out of the woodwork. I've had very many comments, dozens of comments at this point, of people saying the same thing. They've either reversed their irregular heartbeat or their congestive heart failure improved. And when I was diagnosed with that, I was told this is chronic. The best you're going to be able to do, Kerry, is maybe keep it the same. It's not going to get any better. It's probably going to get worse. Maybe keep it the same at the best. But I didn't keep it the same. It reversed from a 60 to a 44. So as of right now, 470 days into carnivore, those 15 pills I was on, I'm on 0 medications. I have no depression, no anxiety. I don't snore anymore. My congestive heart failure reversed. My irregular heartbeat reversed. I feel absolutely incredible. And every day as carnivore goes on more and more, I feel better and better. I have more energy, and I feel more gratitude, and my demeanor, my mood has just gotten better and better. So.
Yeah, what an inspiring story. I mean, my background is I'm a specialist practitioner in obesity and diabetes, and this is many years, like 15 years, and I used to be high carb when I started, and I fell for all the chronic progressive disease, terminology, and then I started to see people reverse their type 2 diabetes in particular, and managing their type 1, but reversing the type 2, and they would always say to me that they're ignoring my advice because they've gone low carb or they've gone keto. And I this, like I say, 15 years ago, I hadn't bought into this until about 10 years ago. So for a long time, I was thinking, this can't be right. This can't be right. And it does frustrate me because, you hit the nail on the head. You're probably the only one that's ever reversed this, because most people have this problem, are told to avoid red meat. And that's the weird thing. So the great thing about what you're doing is putting it out there that maybe the mainstream medicine regime, the standard duty of care, might be a little bit off. My coronary artery calcium scan, which again I did when I was high carb, was 639, and I can't wait to get a retest. But I told the radiologist at the time, I said, this is going to be terrible because I'm just about to change my diet, which is why I've come in to do this. I've led the perfect poster boy existence. I've done the food guidelines. I don't smoke. I don't drink. I don't touch red meat. I don't touch saturated fat. I have porridge in the morning, or oatmeal as the Americans call it, skim milk, lots of fruit and veg, and it's going to be atrocious. And she said, it won't be. It'll be great. And it was atrocious. And my wife, who went in with me, who didn't eat bread all her life because it made her tummy feel, upset. She didn't eat potatoes. She had eggs and bacon for breakfast. Hers was a big fat 0. So, there you go. I think it's interesting how you got so into this. It's amazing. So you mentioned the 470 days and your YouTube channel. Are you now a bit of a sort of person that spreads the word? How do you find carnivore?
Yeah, well, I am. I've been doing YouTube for 8 or 9 years, mostly about we have a homestead. It was a homesteading YouTube channel. And so when I hit 30 days on carnivore and my depression was going away and I stopped snoring and all these things started happening, I'm like, I'm going to do one video. I'm going to do my 30-day carnivore video. And I put that video out there, and I was very passionate and fired up in the video because I came from a place of hopeless depression, like this dark, dark place for so long, and finally lifted. And then I started realizing there's a lot of people. The thing that I realized that really made me mad was I suffered for so long, and the root cause was never addressed. And the root cause for me was just nutrition. And I've heard that story over and over again. And so I was pretty passionate when I did that video, and I guess it resonated with a lot of people, and it kind of took off. I think the video was getting close to maybe 1 million views now. And then after I did that video, I had so many people reach out to me that had the same problems as I had, especially with depression and anxiety. And people said, I did the same thing. I reversed it. And I'm looking around in the world at friends and family, and you look at the statistics of depression. I had Dr. Georgia Eid on my channel. She said there's 1 billion people in the world right now with mental health issues. I think that number's underreported too, because I didn't report mine until it got really, really bad. 44% of college students experience depression. It's the numbers are just heartbreaking. So I decided I'm going to do another video on this, and then another video. I started doing more, and I started hearing more stories. And my thing was, I found keto years ago from a documentary on Netflix, not through YouTube. And I'm like, is there any documentary on carnivore or eating a proper human diet? And I couldn't find any documentary on it. There's some really good ones on keto, but nothing on a proper human diet. Or initially the idea, Stephen, was let's do a documentary on carnivore. The idea has since evolved to, I believe I'm doing so well because I'm eating a proper human diet, or in other words, I've returned to what's natural for humans, and I'm avoiding everything that's not natural for humans, mainly through my diet, but I'm getting sunshine, I'm exercising, I'm doing things that humans were meant to do, and I'm feeling incredible. So I said, on day 67 of carnivore, I announced on my YouTube channel, I'm like, we're going to just do a documentary. Like, what? I'm carnivore now. I can do anything, right? So I made this grand announcement, but my idea for this documentary from the beginning was, it's not going to be all about the science and everything of a carnivore diet. It's going to be about the individual stories of people doing carnivore or a proper human diet to overcome health issues. And at first it was going to just be depression, but then I started learning people are reversing type 2 diabetes, fertility issues, women's health issues, mental health, aging is a huge one. Autoimmune disorders. I started hearing so many stories. I had people in their 60s, 70s, 80s emailing me, messaging me. I've been doing carnivore for 5 years. I'm thriving. They're sending me before and after pictures. So that was where the documentary idea was born. And then this incredible individual, his name is Bill Knott. He's 700 pounds. He was stuck in his house in Alaska for 4 years, depressed. He sent me a message on one of my YouTube videos, and he was just depressed beyond belief. He said, meat in Alaska is so expensive. I want to try carnivore diet. If I don't do this, I'm going to die. And I said, this guy's perfect for the documentary. And 3 weeks later, my daughter Emma and I flew to Alaska, and we filmed Bill, his beginning of his story, doing carnivore diet. And kind of long story short, he's about to hit 1 year next month. He's down 250 pounds. He overcame depression, and he stepped outside his door into the beauty of Alaska for the first time in almost 5 years, just about 2 weeks ago. He's out riding his four-wheeler, and he's in the sunshine. It's changed his life forever. And we've been traveling all around the world filming individuals. We just filmed our 26th person. We're filming individuals and doctors about a proper human diet. And the name of the documentary is Healing Humanity. We're not doing this to make money. It's not a business. It's all a passion project. So we did, similar to you, Stephen, I did a 24-hour live stream back in September to raise funds for this documentary. And actually, that's how we raised most of the funds we needed to continue filming for the documentary. But that's kind of the story. So I've been doing the YouTube thing, but my main passion, my main purpose, my main goal in life is to get these stories out there. It was my story. It's so much bigger than my story now. It's all of these individual stories. The goal is to reach people in the world right now that are hopeless, and make them aware that there's a root cause for their problem that they might not be addressing.
Yeah, and I think that's brilliant. The Bill Knott, 600-pound and depressed, and not going outside in Alaska, and then finally doing that after a year of carnivore is pretty heart-wrenching and perfect, really, for filming. When do you feel that the documentary will be finished and to your satisfaction, and then out on general release?
Yeah, it's a great question. We're aiming for, optimistically, the summer of next year. The tricky part is I get this question all the time. People are fired up. They want to see the documentary, so I get it. But the goal was to follow people for 1 year, which is what we're doing with Bill and some others in the documentary. So that adds a lot of complexity to it. Bill hasn't even hit a year yet. He's got another month or so before he hits a year. So that makes it take longer. And then the other reason is we only get one chance at this, so we want to do a really good job. And the more I've been going, Stephen, like we had all of these topics we were going to cover, and then cancer came out of the woodwork. An individual named Jeff DeProsperous, who was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, saw one of my YouTube videos. Actually, he met me through the 24-hour live stream. He saw the 24-hour live stream, sent me a video, and he's thriving as a carnivore with stage 4 cancer. He's far outlived his prognosis. His chemotherapy is way more bearable when he's in a deep state of ketosis and fasting versus on the standard American diet. And I started realizing that cancer should be a huge part of this documentary as well. So we keep having these other stories that pop up. But long story short, summer of next year is definitely our optimistic goal, unless something amazing comes up in the meantime. But we filmed 26 people so far. Next month, I'm going to be filming Dr. Philip Ovadia in Illinois. And then we've got some other individuals after that. I'm hoping to get out to the UK at some point because I really want to film. I think we have a mutual friend, Carnivore Kent, Lee Kopis. He's become a good friend.
Yeah.
Incredible story, depression, anxiety, and then, of course, his colon.
Yes. Yeah. The Ken Carnivore. And Lee is actually part of what we call the Carnivore Team GB panel on a Tuesday night. So literally in an hour's time, I'll be speaking with Lee and we'll be answering questions live. So, yeah, when you come over, give me a shout because I'll come down and have a chat with you because I'd love to meet you and Lee as well. I've never met him in the flesh, but his story is amazing. I think there is a thing in Britain called the Fourth Bridge, and when you paint it, you go all the way across, and by the time you finish it, you have to go back to the beginning and start again. You might be doing a documentary like that. I think you get to the end and think, oh, there's 24 more stories. I've got to do part 2.
Well, just real quick on that point, that's the intention was one documentary, maybe 90 minutes or so. We've already announced and decided we can't do these topics justice, like cancer, we can't do justice. So we are still doing one documentary, but we're going to do a series after that where we can have one episode dedicated to cancer, one episode dedicated to type 2 diabetes. So it is probably it's going to be just like The Bridge. It'll probably keep going on and on forever.
Yeah, and that's what I found. I mean, I hit 60 this year. I've been doing it for 5 years as a carnivore coach, and before that, a keto coach, low carb, 10 years. I've got over 1,000 clients, 250 success stories. And you think, oh, I'm going to run out soon. And it just doesn't stop. And as soon as you put a new thing out, like you said, I've got quite a few about reversing kidney disease. I then will get comments saying, I've had this, I've reversed it, blah, 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 blah. Can I come on? And I'm like, yeah, have you got proof that this has happened to you? And it's just endless. It's also very frustrating that there's so much skepticism and so much misinformation about this wonderful way of eating. And you're doing your documentary, I just think is a fantastic thing because that's what we need. So I take my hat off to you. It's brilliant that you're doing it. It is a big project, and doing it right is also really important because I've seen some things filmed online about carnivore and you just think they're really missing the point here. They're not focusing on successes. They're, maybe too artsy-fartsy, doing lots of nice looking images. But in the end, people want to see. People like Bill, 600 pounds, 250 pounds down. This is how his life's changed. This is what he does. Tick, next. Let's do the next thing. Because it's much more convincing when it's just person after person after person after person, different situation, different area, different illness. But it does seem to be like the magic wand. And that is a sort of dangerous thing as well because, it's not easy to adapt to this way of eating. You've got all the pressure from your family and friends telling you you're crazy like you did. You saw that guy, thought it was crazy when you first saw him. So it's not like, I've seen this video, I'm just going to do it. Everyone's going to accept it because that doesn't happen. Your doctor doesn't accept it, your nurse. So there's a lot of pressure, isn't there, to stick with it, even when you've got these great results.
Yeah, for sure. I love what you said too, because that's the biggest thing that is different with our documentary. I don't believe you can change anyone, or no matter how passionate I am about carnivore, I can't go tell a loved one, just do this carnivore, but I believe you can inspire them. That's what we're trying to do with the documentary. Put those stories out there. They're so much bigger than me. This is this person's story. Take what you want from it. But across all of these, the crazy thing, Stephen, is all of these different health issues. We have one woman we filmed in South Carolina. She was diagnosed with Parkinson's, a full-blown stroke. She had rheumatoid arthritis. She was bedridden with a walker, and she's about to do a 500-mile hike, the St. Francis of Assisi Trail. She's absolutely thriving on carnivore. And I wouldn't believe it had I not gone out there and personally looked at her medical records. Like Parkinson's, this is just insane. I'm hearing more and more stories like that. So, yeah, it's the documented individual stories we're trying to get out there. And it is a lot of pressure. It's been a big undertaking, but I've realized it's bigger than me. It's just getting these stories out into the world. And everyone that has one of these stories, they want it to be heard because they found a second chance at life, and they realize there's other people out there that are hopeless like they were, and they don't need to be.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the things I think people that have done success stories for me have fed back to me. I can't believe how many comments I've got. I can't believe how helpful this has been. So my ratio of likes is pretty good on YouTube, which is unusual because the vegans like to sort of hijack it. So they're all sort of in their 99%, 1,000 comments. So there's a lot of people watching this things, and there are a lot of people taking action, and I think the groundswell of opinion is just turning. I really do. And I didn't think that maybe 3 years ago. I was a little bit down about it because I was thinking this is magical, but there's so much pushback. But I think people like yourself, Sean Baker, Chafee, Ken Berry are all pushing against this tsunami of misinformation and winning the battle, which is, you can probably hear I'm pretty fired up about all this sort of stuff. So in the description, if you send me a link to donate for the documentary, we'll put that in the description. And you very kindly agreed to come on to the 24-hour live stream I'm doing this weekend. So you're coming on with Emily, Coach Emily, who's a good friend of mine from the Steak and Butter Gang. And again, you can talk more about your journey, maybe a little bit less, and talk more about the documentary and bring other things to the table. So, Kerry, I want to thank you for giving me 40 minutes of your time. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time as well, and looking forward to that 24-hour live stream.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. It's going to